If your family lives or works outside of the United States, but your college student is a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or they plan to go to school in the United States, can you still submit FAFSA? So the quick answer is yes. In fact, we tell all families that they need to be submitting FAFSA, especially those who are planning to attend college in the United States. But there are some specific rules, forms, and kind of workarounds that a family needs to be aware of, especially when parents are living abroad or earning foreign income, for example, or if for some reason they're not submitting a U.S. tax return. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly how to complete the FAFSA when parents live and work abroad. We'll go step by step, and that way your student can still possibly qualify for aid by submitting this form, because we always want to make sure that we are maximizing money. Now hit subscribe, because every week we have a new strategy to help your family work towards a debt-free education. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, and this is what we do. We help families overwhelmed by the cost of college secure scholarships so that they can help their students avoid student loans. Now, scholarships are our bread and butter. In fact, we've helped families secure over $16 million to date. But we're always talking about combining all the different types of money, as many different sources as possible. And of course, money through FAFSA is number one, right? That is just a form that we need to submit, and it can potentially qualify us for thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. So we always tell our families in the Scholarship System program, always submit FAFSA. So that is why we're covering that today. And I will say we have a whole FAFSA playlist if you have questions about that. We'll link to that along with all the other free resources in the description below. Now, just a quick note for international students, we are only familiar with U.S. citizens and permanent residents. We're unfamiliar with the process for actual international students without a U.S. passport. So first and foremost, it's important to understand that submitting FAFSA is possible even if parents live abroad. We've met a lot of American families where the parents are abroad, they've got a job abroad, maybe they're working with the US government, whatever it is. So if we were to assume that we can't submit FAFSA, you could miss out on tons of money. The FAFSA is based on citizenship and dependency, not necessarily location. So again, as long as your student is a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, then they can and should submit FAFSA. Now, even if parents live abroad, the form still asks for parents' financial information if their student is considered a dependent, which most students are dependents. So you will still need to provide your income and asset details. Now, before I get into handling that, I do want to say that also you will be eligible for private scholarships and outside scholarships as a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. So we always want to be tapping into that money as well. So get FAFSA out of the way if that's what we're doing right now, and then get into scholarships, which I do have a free 1-hour webinar. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long. You go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar, or you can click the link below, or click this video, open it up and check it out after you finish this one. But that training will get you started on where to find legitimate scholarships with less competition and how to find other sources of money beyond FAFSA. Everyone that's doing FAFSA should be doing that process. So make sure you check out that free webinar. Okay, so now let's get back to what we do with our money and reporting if we're living abroad. So even if you earn income outside of the US, you will need to report that in the US dollar form on FAFSA using an exchange rate from the day that you are completing FAFSA. You can find it on whichever website, xe.com. You can find it through US Treasury, exchange tables. If you go to Google, it's pretty easy to find exchange rates. But remember that FAFSA uses income as a baseline to calculate a student's need. So even if your taxes are handled abroad, you still need to provide these figures. If you do not file a U.S. tax return, that is okay, but you'll need to manually enter your income instead of using something called the IRS Direct Data Exchange Tool. This is where they can just pull returns, but obviously if you are not submitting returns, they can't do that, and so we have to do it manually. Now on the FAFSA, you want to select will not file for the tax question and enter your income in US dollars, again, based on foreign earnings documents that you have. Maybe it could be pay slips, maybe it could be employer statements. I know every country, every employer even handles that differently. But you do want to base it on actual documentation. Don't just give them kind of a guesstimate. We don't want to do that. If you have foreign tax documents, you can convert those totals to US dollar equivalents and use those for the income sections for reporting the earnings. And just know that FAFSA can walk you through the process when you're doing the application, but you want to make sure that you're keeping records. Colleges might ask for verification later, so we want to base this on actual documentation and actual proof. Now let's get into reporting assets and bank accounts. So even if accounts are held overseas, FAFSA still requires you to report assets in the US dollar value as of the day you file. This includes checking and savings accounts, investment accounts, college savings plans that are in your name and fall under the reporting status. You do not have to include retirement accounts like pensions or IRAs, but do include any kind of liquid savings or investments that are accessible for education. But if they are tied up until retirement, then that is not factored into FAFSA numbers. Now, what do we do if parents do not have a social security number? So here is what to do. If one or both parents do not have a social security number, then your student can submit the FAFSA still. They just have to enter zeros in the social security number field for parents. Then that means that you will have to print, sign, and mail in the signature page after submitting FAFSA electronically. But the student, assuming they have one, they can still electronically file using their FSA ID, their FAFSA ID, but the parent will have to be handled through mail. That said, if both students and parents are US citizens, but just live and work abroad, they should be able to qualify for getting that FSA, the FAFSA ID, and sign it electronically. So this is only focused on those who do not have that social security number. Okay, let's talk about additional documents that schools may require. So after submission, your student might be chosen for something called verification. This is especially prominent if a student does have foreign income or taxes or manual entry. So be prepared. Again, anything that we submit, any numbers that we hand in, we want to keep proof of that. Put it in a file, save it in your Google Drive, whatever you need to do, print it out and put it in a folder. This includes foreign tax statements or income certificates, any kind of bank balances, bank statements, any investment accounts that you had to report that are held abroad. It may be employer letters verifying salary or employment. So any kind of documentation, again, that was submitted. This is also helpful, by the way, for financial aid appeals. So if we are going back and asking for more money, which is something that we talk about with the scholarship system and our Debt-Free Degree Lab membership, then we also will need all of this documentation. But each school handles this differently, so it's important to respond to the financial aid office requests as quickly as possible. Now, the next thing I want to say is using the CSS Profile. So some private schools also require the CSS Profile, which often asks more detailed information, including foreign assets and currency conversions. It is more complex, but it's also an opportunity, again, to explain your family's financial situation clearly. And again, it is required at a lot of schools, especially private institutions. So including high cost of living differences or tax structures for the country of residence, things like this can make a difference, especially because CSS Profile asks about those. So encouraging your student to complete both profiles if required. This ensures that they're eligible for not just financial aid, for federal financial aid, but also for institutional aid. And then if living abroad also creates unusual expenses or limits your family's ability to contribute financially, then that again goes back to that appeals, financial aid appeals that I mentioned, which again, each school can handle it differently, but that is where we can share any kind of maybe exchange rate fluctuations that really affect that income, recent relocation or job change, or maybe foreign taxes or mandatory pension contributions that are not reflected in FAFSA data. So anything that's unique that really hits financially because of being abroad, you want to make sure that you're explaining that, because that should be, that's fair information, right? That should be considered. Now, we have an entire FAFSA playlist, so we will link to that in the description below. But comment, did you know, if your parents are living abroad, or if you're a parent living abroad, did you know that FAFSA was still an option and that you should be submitting it? I'd love to know in the comments. Or did someone tell you, no, don't do it? I'd love to know in the comments. All right, so parents, even if you're living outside of the US or working outside of the US, your student can still receive need-based aid as long as you know how to report everything correctly and in a timely manner through submitting FAFSA. I know FAFSA can feel confusing in many cases, and especially in this situation, but with the right preparation, the right documentation, and hopefully with this instruction video, then you will be well set in order to submit it smoothly and efficiently. And remember that we're submitting this every single year a student is in college, starting their senior year before they go there. So learning this now will help for the following years. And this is how we can not only become eligible for federal financial aid, but also money through the universities. And then don't forget my point about CSS Profile. If they require FAFSA and CSS Profile, then we want to make sure we're submitting that as well. All right. Hopefully this was helpful. Hit subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you found it helpful. And don't forget to check out that free webinar about the scholarships, because that's the next step. Just go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar for that, or check out the description for all of the free resources we covered. All right. I'll see you in next week's video.